A gentle history for sleep. How beauty standards changed through time. Introduction. If you're ever unhappy with how you look, here's something to know. It's not just your imagination. Beauty standards are not universal truths. They're historical inventions. They're products of culture, economics, and social power. When you look at history, you'll see that what beautiful means has changed dramatically across centuries. Tonight, let's take a relaxing journey through time and see how beauty standards have transformed. This might help you understand that whatever you're feeling about your appearance is just one moment in a very long, ever-changing story. The Middle Ages. Pale skin and soft bodies. The look of nobility between the 13th and 15th centuries in Europe. Being beautiful required one very specific thing: having skin that was as pale as possible. This wasn't just a preference, it was practically a religion. Why? Because women from wealthy families spent their time indoors. They didn't work outside. Pale skin showed that you didn't labor in the sun, which meant you were rich. To achieve this pale look, women used dangerous methods. They applied white powders, lead-based paints, and other toxic substances to their faces. Some women even used vinegar or arsenic water. Yes, you read that right. These methods caused serious skin damage and sometimes even poisoning. But fashion's demands were powerful. Body shape and size. Here's something interesting. In the Middle Ages, a soft, round body was considered beautiful. Why? Because it showed you had enough food to eat. A plump woman demonstrated wealth and prosperity. In a time when most people struggled to get enough meals, having extra weight was a luxury. So beauty was literally a sign of how much money your family had. Hair and headdresses. Women's hair was important too, but it had to be covered. Married women, especially, had to hide their hair under elaborate headdresses. These headdresses came in many styles. Some were tall, some were wide, some were shaped like horns or hearts. The size and expense of your headdress showed your social status. Hair color mattered as well. Red or light blonde hair was considered beautiful. Some women even bleached their hair or used dangerous dyes to achieve this look. Beauty in the ancient world. Ancient Egypt. Power and coal. In ancient Egypt, beauty was an art form. Egyptian women spent hours perfecting their appearance. They lined their eyes with thick black coal, a dark powder made from minerals. This wasn't just for looks, it also protected the eyes from the bright sun and the sand. Egyptian women used oils and fats to keep their skin smooth and glowing. They wore makeup to emphasize their eyes and lips. They shaved most of their body hair because smooth skin was considered sophisticated and clean. Red and copper-colored henna was used to dye hair and decorate hands and feet. Like in the Middle Ages, pale skin was also valued in Egypt, showing that you were wealthy enough to stay out of the sun. Ancient Rome. The power of beauty. In Rome and Greece, beauty was connected to health and power. Roman women spent a lot of time on their appearance, plucking eyebrows, applying makeup, styling their hair in elaborate ways. Hair was arranged in complex styles that took slaves hours to create. The more complicated your hairstyle, the wealthier you appeared. Roman women also used a lot of makeup. They applied white powder to their faces, rouged their cheeks, and darkened their eyebrows. Like Egypt, pale skin was a sign of wealth and status. The Renaissance. A new beginning. The changing ideal. In the 15th and 16th centuries, beauty standards began to shift across Europe. Pale skin was still important, but now women also wanted high foreheads. How did they achieve this? Some women actually plucked out their hairline to make their foreheads appear higher. It sounds painful, and it was. The Renaissance brought a new attention to hair color too. Blonde and reddish tones were fashionable, and women used various methods to lighten their hair, including some quite dangerous chemical treatments. The ideal body. During the Renaissance, women still had soft, rounded bodies. But now they used devices called stays or corsets to shape their body in specific ways. These were tight garments that compressed the waist and pushed up the chest. They were uncomfortable and sometimes even dangerous, limiting how much a woman could breathe or move. Beauty during this time became increasingly artificial. Women wore masks to protect their skin, used beauty marks made of silk or velvet, and applied thick makeup to create an almost doll-like appearance. The Victorian Era. Tight corsets and tiny waists. The age of constriction. The 19th century. The Victorian Era brought some of the most extreme beauty standards in history. The ideal woman had an impossibly tiny waist. To achieve this, women wore corsets that were laced so tightly they could barely breathe. Women wore these corsets from morning until night, sometimes even while sleeping. The corset would compress the ribs, squeeze the waist, and create an hourglass shape. Doctors warned about the dangers: fainting, rib damage, organ compression, but fashion didn't care. A pale, delicate-look Victorian beauty also required extremely pale skin. Women used powders, lotions, and even dangerous bleaching agents to lighten their skin. They avoided the sun at all costs. Pale skin suggested that a woman was delicate, refined, and didn't have to work outdoors. Rosy cheeks were also valued, so women used bright red rouge. The eyebrows were thin and arched. The overall look was supposed to be fragile and helpless, the opposite of strong or powerful. The Gibson girl by the early 1900s, beauty standards shifted again. A new ideal emerged. The Gibson girl. She had a smaller waist than before, but slightly less constrained. She had a refined face, small features, and an air of elegance. She represented the modern woman, independent, educated, but still beautiful in a feminine way. The 20th century. Rapid changes. The Roaring Twenties. The 1920s brought dramatic changes. Suddenly, long hair was out and short, bobbed hair was in. Women cut their hair short in what was considered a radical, almost shocking move. Corsets were abandoned, and women's clothing became looser. Makeup changed too. Eyes were heavily lined and darkened, the flapper look. Lips were painted in a dark red or burgundy. The overall appearance was meant to be modern, rebellious, and young. The glamorous 1950s. In the 1950s, beauty standards became more about curves again, but in a different way. The ideal woman had a small waist, but also prominent breasts and hips, the hourglass figure popularized by actresses like Marilyn Monroe. However, achieving this required girdles and push-up bras, so the constriction never really left. Hair was styled in elaborate waves and curls, often achieved with dangerous chemical treatments. Pale, smooth skin was still valued, and women used heavy foundation to achieve an almost plastic-looking finish. The natural 1970s. The 1970s brought a rebellion against the artificial look of the 1950s. Some women embraced a more natural beauty, less makeup, more relaxed hair. However, straight, long hair became the ideal, which actually required a lot of work to achieve and maintain. Tan skin became fashionable for the first time in centuries. For millennia, pale skin meant wealth and status. Now, tan skin meant you had enough leisure time to spend in the sun. The wealthy could afford vacations to beaches. The modern era. Social media and filters. The age of Instagram today. Beauty standards are more complicated than ever. Social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok create new beauty ideals constantly. Influencers and celebrities showcase a perfect version of beauty that's actually often enhanced by makeup, lighting, angles, and filters. The current beauty ideal often includes large, full lips, high cheekbones, full, thick eyebrows, smooth, glowing skin, a certain body shape that varies depending on the trend. But here's the trick. Most of these images aren't real. They are enhanced. Faces are smoothed digitally. Skin is filtered. Bodies are edited. Yet millions of people compare themselves to these impossible standards. The cost of comparison. Social media has made it easier than ever to feel inadequate. You can scroll through hundreds of perfect faces and bodies in minutes. This constant comparison creates anxiety, depression, and unhealthy behaviors. Cosmetic procedures have become more common. People get Botox, lip fillers, cheek implants, and other surgeries to match the beauty standards of their time. The irony is that in 50 years, people will look at these faces and think they look strange, just like we look at old photos today. The key lesson. Beauty standards are not real. After traveling through all these centuries, the most important thing to understand is this. Beauty standards are inventions. They're not natural. They're not universal. They're not permanent. What do they really represent? Beauty standards actually tell us a lot about a society's values and economics. 1. Pale skin in the Middle Ages and Renaissance meant you were wealthy and didn't work in the sun too. Tan skin in the modern era means you have money for vacations. 3. Plumpness in medieval times meant you had enough food. 4. Thinness in modern times ironically also means you have money. Money for gym memberships, healthy food, and personal trainers. 5. Long hair in some eras showed you didn't work manually. 6. Pale eyes and other genetic features became desirable simply because they were rare in a particular society. Beauty standards are really about power and economics. They reflect what a society values and what it costs to achieve. Why do we follow them? We follow beauty standards for several reasons. Social belonging. We want to fit in with our peers. Attractiveness. We want to be attractive to potential partners. Confidence. Looking like the current ideal can make us feel more confident. Success. Society often rewards people who meet beauty standards with better jobs, more attention, and more opportunities, but here's the hard truth. By the time you achieve today's beauty standard, it will have changed. A different perspective. Imagine this. In 50 years, what you consider beautiful today will seem as strange as Victorian corsets seem to you now. Some future person will look at filtered Instagram photos and think they're hilarious or tragic. This isn't meant to make you feel hopeless. It's meant to liberate you. If beauty standards keep changing, and they're based on economics and culture rather than anything real, then maybe, just maybe, you don't need to follow them so strictly. A healthier way to think about beauty, instead of asking, am I beautiful according to today's standards? You might ask, do I feel healthy and strong? Do I have energy and vitality? Can my body do the things I want it to do? Do I feel comfortable and confident in my own skin? Am I taking care of myself in ways that feel good? These questions matter more than matching whatever beauty ideal happens to be popular right now. Final thoughts. You are living in one specific moment in time. Your appearance is shaped by the culture you live in, the media you consume, and the people around you. But you are not required to match any particular standard. Remember, medieval women would have been horrified at today's standards. Victorian women would be shocked at modern freedom of dress. Renaissance women would be confused by our preference for thin bodies. Future people will think our current standards are ridiculous, so the next time you feel bad about how you look, remember, you're just one person living in one era. The idea of what's beautiful has changed 100 times before, and it will change 100 times again. You're caught in a moment of history. That moment will pass. And you'll still be here, hopefully being kind to yourself and your body, regardless of what era's beauty standards say. Sleep well tonight knowing that beauty, in the end, is just one long conversation between time and culture. You don't have to win that conversation.